All right, so this is an actually very important conversation. Now, people might know that I made fun of this guy in my last video talking about him, so they may be wondering why I'm covering him and I like the video, right? I don't usually dislike videos. That's one thing I don't do, but I do like videos that I enjoy. Now, why did I enjoy like this video? Well, it turns out it covers a very important topic, which is that um, a lot of physical games have DRM built into them. Like this is like really like most digital game. I mean, most games have DRM, right? So it doesn't matter if you buy physical. The software, the DRM is the software that comes on a disc, right? Like there's no real truly DRM free thing, right? Um, and so yeah, let's start this, right? But yeah, you don't really own physical games the way you think you do is like a good thing to start with. And also, someone has mentioned disk rot, right? Disk rot, for those who are wondering, is a phenomenon in where ultimately all data has to have a physical manifestation in the real world to exist in the first fucking place, right? You know what I mean? Right? Like, ultimately, all software still has a physical hardware component to it. Um, like the real legit, I guess the real statement on software is that software you don't have to physically go out and get yourself and move and all that. Software is when hardware moves electrons to match other patterns of electrons directly, and therefore that pattern of electrons that got copied will be stored as data on your hardware, right? But ultimately, all software really is just copyable patterns. Those patterns still physically exist, though, right? Like you can't just change those patterns and then you'll have the same thing. That's not how it works, right? You have to have the same patterns in the software, right? Um, and so, yes, ultimately, because everything in software has a physical component to it and Mother Nature, all physical things eventually rot away because of natural processes. That's how you age, for example. That's also how, plastic eventually rots on discs, right? So, like the way Blu ray, like someone mentions Blu ray isn't rot free. It's just they have a lot of extra layers, and because it's mostly plastic, it'll take a lot longer for those layers to melt because plastic takes a while to melt. That's just how it works, right? It does mean though that eventually, like enough of those layers will melt or rot or whatever that before it gets to the data itself, right? That it will become basically a CD first, right? But yeah, this is a thing. Like a good way to say it, right? Like people might yada yada this, right? Think of the most famous painting in the world ever, right? The Mona Lisa, or like a sculpture, um, you know, like a sculpture like you know the statue of David by Michelangelo, right? Or like Bernini's statue of David, which is a lot cooler in my opinion, but came later, right? Um, but like all of those, right? They have to be preserved in basically perfect mint condition, and they still rot away slowly, right? So what happens with the marble statues? I actually don't know. I don't know how they preserve them. But with the painting, right? With the paintings, they have a guy actually repaint them. They pay a person every couple hundred years to repaint these masterpieces. Just a little bit, just a little smidgen, right? Just to keep them in mint condition for the audiences, right? Um, so keep that in mind. Literal masterpieces that we have treated like royalty have to be taken perfect care of, and they can still have damages happen to them over time because of the laws of nature. You know, like the elements, light itself, for a lot of these things can even start to corrode things. But even before light itself, you have, of course, air. You know, water occasionally, right? Like we don't need, you know, like some of these things have seen fires even, right? So you got to remember that that's a big thing going on with this. Like
Everyone,
physically, your media, if you never back it up, which is piracy, right? If you never pirate things, you will never truly preserve them, right? You might own the things if you have them physically, but do you are you preserving them? And the answer is, if you're not copying them as well, then no, you aren't.
welcome to another episode of Electric Uncut.
This is
I
why
know
emulation is so important to me, by the way. I don't, and piracy should be protected within reason, in my eyes, right? And this is why.
for sure this topic will be pretty damn controversial among my audience and among my fellow retro
Obviously, I've been very well spoken against the Digital Millennium Copyright Act anyway, but still.
gamers, but it is something that I haven't heard really discussed that widely, especially the angle that I want to come at it in. And also because I think this might be a useful topic for some people to hear about or to think about a little more, rather than sort of just accepting the usual YouTube logic, the usual YouTube talking points around this. So the topic I want to talk about is the idea of buying physical games in order to preserve them for the future. Basically, if you want to buy a game like Ketsui Destiny or a new shmup that comes out, or a new indie game that comes out, or Streets of Rage 4 or something, you need to buy the physical version. And the reason why you need to buy the physical version is because the digital version cannot be preserved. It's renting it. It's like buying a license. You're not fully buying a game and stuff like that. And so I want to talk about this topic because I think there is truth to some of these ideas and stuff. One YouTuber that definitely comes to mind, I'm not saying this to give him a hard time or anything, just this person talks about this a lot, is Adam Korlick, where I followed his channel for many years. I'm a fan of his. But he always has talked about how he won't buy games, even if he likes them, unless they come out in physical format. And he's gone over in his videos why he feels this way about how
So for me, like, the thing is, can you remove the DRM? If you can, you know, you can own it, right? And the best way to do it is back it up on floppy. I mean, not floppy, flash. Sorry, the floppy. Back it up on the flash drive.
if you're buying a digital game like
Yeah,
Sonic
you'll have to have a lot of them, yeah, but back them up.
Mania, for instance, you
But
buy
then the
that
cool thing is, right, if a flash drive, because flash drives are also kind of cheap, if one of them fails, what you do, right, is you have a second copy in case that happens, right? And that's how it works, right? So now you have that, right? You can preserve it because if it starts to erode, you can copy the data before it gets to the actual data
digitally on your Switch
and
or
preserve
your
it that way.
PS4. In his idea, in many people's ideas, you are essentially buying a license to play that game, but you're not physically owning that game. You're not having eternal access to that game. And I do think there's a lot of validity to this idea, but I also think it kind of doesn't fully go all the way down that path of preservation, down that path of um, being owning games, ownership, stuff like that, because I think it kind of stops at physical and just kind of accepts that physical, okay, physical is the end all be all because at the end of the day, whatever else happens, you can stick that disc in your PS4 and play it in the future. If the internet goes down, if servers go down and stuff like that, that is still possible. The reason why I want to challenge this concept is because I don't think that's actually true. I think we stop at physical and we think, okay, well, you can put that disc in the PS4, everything's good. But actually, no. Down the line, that the physical format will also fail. So it kind of becomes full circle, ironically. And so this is what I want to discuss in this video. And
Yeah,
even if you
well,
don't
basically, physical, you can say slurs, but it'll eventually erode. Digital, you can't say slurs, but like you'll kind of have it preserved a lot longer if it's like a stable server. And then piracy is you just own it, and it's free, and they can't take it away from you because you know, right? Now, for me, I don't really care about owning my games. I'll purchase things on the digital renting service known as Valve or Good Old Games or whatever all the time. But ultimately, I know that eventually the DRM might fail, right? Valve might sink and I might lose all my games, right? Yeah, could happen. Probably will eventually. Um, but yeah, I don't really care because my thing is I just want the convenience of playing these games that I like. And as long as I have that, I'm fine, right? For me, that's what I want.
Don't fully agree with me
Like
because
I
I know
like the convenience. I don't really care about anything else. So for me, as long as it's convenient, I'm fine with it.
a lot of
That's why me and my girlfriend hate Dead Space 3 now, because Dead Space 3 requires you to log into an account on EA, and we have both hated it.
people who are fans of my channel, a lot of
Like we
people
played that together, and we literally shit more on EA than the game itself. And we were planning on shitting on the game as like a fun little, haha, this game sucks stream. But we shit. The game wasn't even that bad. EA was just so fucking horrendous that we had like 10 minutes of our stream dedicated to shitting on the fact that you know, EA made us do all this bullshit just to play together.
who are fans of retro gaming are very
I also
invested
got sick during the stream, so I ended up having to use the restroom twice during it, and that kind of sucked too.
in physical and are big fans of it. And when you put a lot of money into something too, it is a little bit harder to let go of certain things or to kind of, I guess, change your thinking on certain things. I know this because
I
I've
think it's a good way to say it, right? Eventually, your house will crumble. Eventually, the skyscrapers in your city will crumble, right? If they're not well maintained, right? Like eventually, everything ends. Eventually the sun will get mad and it'll eat up the earth, and then there'll be nothing left, right? They'll all be gone, just like Daddy will be, right? Daddy was, right? So, like, you know what I mean? Like, eventually, just everything will rot away because we have a timer, right? Like, whether the timer is God smites the earth, or we smite ourselves with nukes, or the sun blows up and consumes us all. Regardless, we have a timer, and if none of those fail, the heat death of the universe, right? There eventually, everything you see will not be real anymore, right? There is an end to to all things. It is hopefully a while from now, right? Um, but it will eventually happen, right? All physical things, including y'all asses, will expire. Including our planet, including our universe. All things that are physical will eventually die. It's just how it works.
invested
But
many
that
years.
doesn't mean like preservation is worthless or anything, right? Uh, I'm not a fucking I'm an absurdist, not a nihilist, right? So yeah, nothing really matters except in the moment, right? So therefore, cherish the moment. That's what absurdism is, right? It's like, hey, outside of this moment, no, like this moment won't matter, but I still want this moment to be good because this moment matters. We have this moment. Let's make that matter. That's absurdism versus nihilism. Um, so yeah, I love absurdism. Live in the moment because that's all that matters.
And buying vinyl, and for a very long time I was extremely invested in vinyl. I have thousands upon thousands of dollars worth of physical vinyl records, some of them pretty rare, some of them just expensive for the sake of being expensive because of marketing, just like it's like in video games and
Playing Red Dead Revolver, good game by the way.
stuff like that. But up
This is
until
before, this is a game before Red Dead Redemption. Still a
I
great
say the
game.
past 3 years, I've actually kind of stopped buying vinyls as much. I will still buy them, and there's still a purpose to vinyl records and stuff like that. but I've just had enough time and I've kind of thought forward enough to where I
I'm
really
gonna be honest. Buy it if you want to. That's like the real meat and potatoes of it. I'd say something like like a good way to say it, right? I used to collect Yu-Gi-Oh cards. They're pretty much worthless, right? But um, you know, I'm gonna be honest. You know what? Like I loved most about collecting Yu-Gi-Oh cards more than anything else. That you just open a pack card smell. Like that weird ink odor that you smell when you open up a fresh pack of Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Oh man, that was like euphoric.
realized
Um,
vinyl is not as great of a format as it was kind of
like
advertised. And
I don't really like buy like mega packs or anything, but I'll like buy like a starter deck just to have that smell occasionally. It's just a good smell. I don't
as
even play
trendy
the game physically at all anymore. I play it on Steam if I do anything with it.
as it was, and I did sort of buy into that a bit. And I'll give you some examples why, and then I'll move this on to video games. But this is a good point of comparison,
That's
especially
another thing, right? Like for me, one of the best parts about buying physical is just you can feel it. Like it has a cool feeling. There's a little texture to an NES cartridge, for example.
since I am someone in the same boat as people who are like physical game collectors and spend hundreds of dollars on Sega Saturn games and Dreamcast games and stuff like that, which there's nothing wrong with that. I just want to challenge the idea that the purpose of doing that and the justification is preserving the games, and I'll explain why. But
The purpose for doing that is just you want to, right? The explanation is that you want to. I feel like that should be all you need. Like I want this physically. All right, here you go. Right? If you're only willing to play things physically, right? That's fine, right? That's a fine opinion to have. I feel like needing to justify every decision is dumb anyway. Like I said with like his opinion on the remake, right? The joke really um, of that was like really just caring about what other people think in the first place. Like I play both games, right? Because I find one more fun than the other at different times, right? I haven't really touched the original in a while because I don't have a controller right now. But once I get a controller, I'm probably going to go play the original because I'm kind of craving some humor, right? And that's what the original game has in spades. That the remake sadly doesn't have really any of. I think the remake is better for survival horror, but otherwise, it's not really like better for what like it's not it's better for the way I see it. I guess a good way to say it. Resident Evil 4 is better as a Resident Evil game, but it's worse. Like the remake is better as a Resident Evil game, but it's worse as a Resident Evil 4 remake. I guess is a good way to say it.
again, so with vinyl, I was spending all this money in vinyl for various reasons. One, just because I wanted the vinyls, right? There was something
Like yeah, like it's more fast paced, I guess, with the combat. But then like classic Resident Evils, but it's still like more horror than the original. But otherwise, it's a it's a different game, so it has a different feeling. So I play them for different reasons, and because I have both of them, I'm fine with having them be different games. Because then, like, if it was the same game, then I just paid for a mod pack. You know what I mean? I just paid for a mod texture pack if that was the case.
aesthetic about it that I really liked. And I think that's an extremely valid purpose. One thing about me that might be different, especially on the gaming YouTuber world, is that I actually value aesthetics greatly. And I think aesthetics are a whole completely acceptable justification for doing things. Basically, let's say you spend thousands and thousands of dollars on Sega Saturn games, and you eventually come to agree with me that yes, you're buying all these games and keeping them in nice condition, but you're not actually preserving anything. This is not necessarily the long term gain of preserving stuff. But what you are doing is you're investing in an aesthetic interest, right? You
Yeah, that's what it really like. I feel like that's all you need, right? I feel like just because you want to do it and it feels good to do it, right? Like, another thing like exercising, right? Well, what are you doing it for? Because it feels good. There you go. Like, I don't even exercise to lose weight. I'm kind of fat, and I probably should do it to lose weight, right? But I exercise just because it feels good. Like, it feels good to have like a jog every day, right? I'm not even doing it to lose weight. I don't care if I lose weight. I just like the feeling I get when I do it. So I'm actually gonna do a little bit while we do this. I gotta do some squats. So I'm gonna let him ramble for a few minutes while I do that.
The aesthetic feel, the aesthetic quality of the discs. You like all the aesthetics surrounding physical media. And I think that is 100% valid. And I am someone who indulges in aesthetics greatly. I mean, look at my video here, like black backgrounds and shit like that. Like, I think aesthetics are 100% valid. And in some ways, I think more valid than preservation, because I think preservation is a much wider concept than we give it credit for and stuff like that. Not only like worldwide preservation of games, but also even personal level. But let's get back to my point. So I bought all these vinyls and stuff, and the major reason was aesthetics. Let's just be honest. I loved the aesthetics of vinyl. I loved the way they looked, the way they felt. I loved how it was actually this physical object that carried sound information on it, but it wasn't in a digital format. I mean, all that stuff was really interesting to me. So I spent all this money on vinyls. But one thing that I sort of kind of convinced myself about with vinyl is a lot of audiophiles and vinyl fanatics will say this, is that vinyl has superior sound quality to digital, like to CDs and stuff like that. There's no denying that vinyl has a much better sound quality to like MP3s and like low bit rates and shit like that. But when it comes to CDs versus vinyls, I've kind of shifted my perspective on. I think that CDs are definitely the superior format when it comes to audio quality and stuff like that. And the reason for that is, like, theoretically,
Ugh.
the vinyl can be better than the CD, like theoretically, but
alone. You can't see me, but it's a very good feeling. Like, that's why I exercise. Just do a little bit of exercise for some cardio purposes. And I legit mainly do it just to feel good. It feels good to exercise.
in order to get that happen, and I know this because
It
like I
feels
said,
good to shower. It feels good to shave. It feels good to get a haircut. It feels good to brush your teeth, right? Um, I do it because it feels good and it has made me healthier. Um, Eating healthy feels good, right? Uh, you know, Now, it depends on what you define as healthy, though, right? Like, I primarily eat like chicken, rice, and curry sauce with a little bit of vegetables, right? And I'll just make that, and that'll be like all my food for a day, right? Um, and it's good, So, yeah,
that I've spent thousands
it's
and
got
thousands of
all the nutrition I need and stuff too.
dollars on this. You need to
So
have
it's healthy. It might not be considered a quote healthy food, but it is healthy.
extremely top of the line audio equipment to
The
get that.
thing is, it's healthy because I make it that way, right? You can have it be unhealthy too, right? I could make more of it and then it would be unhealthy, right? But because I make specifically the amount that I make, I can burn those calories off with only like a little bit of exercise, right? And then I'll be losing weight again. So yeah, just something to keep in mind.
That really perfect high quality, because think about it, CDs are mastered, or typically mastered, right? It depends on the release and stuff, but like a quality CD like Nirvana in Utero or something like that is mastered on professional audio equipment, right? That is a professional process happening. And so in order to match that with your own home sound system, you need to have a professional, extremely expensive, extremely fine-tuned system to get that to work. And the thing that I was running into all the time is that um, when I was playing my vinyls, it was cool, but I was spending way more time. I was spending literally dozens, probably hundreds in total, hundreds of hours, like tweaking my vinyls, messing with them, redoing the needle, like just so much time was spent trying to get good sound out of these pieces of wax or whatever they're made out of,
Actually, you know
right?
what I think, right? That actually is like the reason why a lot of people are less active. People don't want to do the active things because they find physical activity fun. They want the body that you get from like doing it like really a lot, right? And that takes a lot of time and effort, right? Whereas like buying a video game, right? It's like you pay the money and there you go, right? So because buying video games is easier for having leisure than working out, a lot of people will just play video games, and that's fine. Like I'm not saying no, but like people should work out more, right? You should play video games. You should work out. You should watch entertaining movies, and you should make time though to enjoy yourself physically and emotionally, and like I said, just basic hygiene and exercise. Good at that, right?
Right? Pieces of
So
vinyl.
it's the same thing with like buying physical. Just do it because you want to, right? The thing is, like, don't be peer pressured into doing something that you don't think you'll enjoy, right? Like, if you don't want to preserve video games physically or whatever, don't do it, right? It's your decision. Who cares, right? Like, at the end of the day, who cares is like probably the best thing if you're not harming anyone. Like, that's the best
Um,
argument. Like, who
whereas
cares what you do if you're not harming anyone? Should be like the ultimate argument, right? Like, who cares if people think you're cringe too, right? Like, if you upload anything online, someone somewhere will find it cringe that what you did, right? So the best thing, right, is to not care, right? Like, I'm a furry. I'm very much cringe, right? I'm fine with lolicon anime. I'm not really into it myself, but I'm perfectly fine if someone is, right? And I'm like, okay, people find that cringe, and you know what I say? I'm not harming anyone, so fuck you, right? I'm gonna be myself. You can not be me, and I can be me, right? And those two things can happen at the same time and be fine.
as you can put in the CD, you have a good speaker system, a good sound system. You're gonna have quality. CDs are high audio quality, right? They're not like MP3s. They're FLAC, high quality. You're gonna get high quality sound consistently every time, unless you don't scratch a CD. And then of course there's the even better thing where you rip your CDs to FLAC. Now you've got 100% consistent sound quality coming out of that thing. And you can also like make playlists, you can rearrange the tracks, you can add tracks that were never in the original release. Because like in Utero, I like to add in some of the B-sides into like the end of the album because I feel like okay, there's room for a little more music here and like cut out Tourette's because I don't like that song. But like there's all this great stuff you could do with high quality like FLACs and stuff and a sound system that you couldn't really do with vinyls and you couldn't really do with CDs. And so what I'm getting at is being 100% objective, I realized if I want to get quality sound and quality like audio experiences, moving to a digital format was actually much stronger, right? Not low quality bitrate CDs, but high quality FLAC
Yeah.
rips and
Well, really, what you do is you kind of just like the best way to go about it, right? Just do what you want. If you enjoy doing something, do it, right? That's ultimately what it should be. That's my opinion, right? If you enjoy doing something and you can afford it and it's not hurting anyone, who the fuck cares? Right? Just don't try to force it on other people, and I'm fine with it, right? I like that's my criticism of the woke and like some parts of the anti woke basically nowadays. Like, the far right and far left basically. My criticism is, right? Hey, I'm not harming anyone with doing what I'm doing, right? Unless you're a pussy ass bitch who thinks words and opinions can harm them. In which case, sticks and stones, my guy, are far worse than words. But anyway, um, besides that, and I just really don't care. Like, I don't care. Like, if someone like my thing with like the Melody Mac thing was I made fun of her, and that was it, right? Because it didn't really seem like she was doing anything harmful. I just made fun of her, right? And that was it. I called her a blue where like I made fun of like the woke like tactics she was using. And then I said go woke, go broke, right? Um, and my joke was I turned like the image where she says slurs in the car into her being blue with blue hair and homeless and sad, right? So I said she was a beautiful woman, happy, and had a car. Now she's a blue hair wokey, depressed and homeless, right? Um, and yeah, obviously it was a poor taste, but it was a joke, right? Ultimately, I don't think that much of her in general to really care, right? I don't find her content entertaining, but she can still do what she wants, right? I can criticize someone's opinion and still say they should have it, right? I think people should have their opinions. I don't agree with them. I'm not going to agree with them, right? I might want to convince people not to, align with those values. It would be cool if I could, but I don't think I will succeed in that. So my thing really is just, hey,
and stuff like that. I was
make
getting
fun of
more
people.
consistent.
Now, if what they're doing is a crime, like I've made fun of Pirate Software and Mark Kern for this. They are actually criminals in that they've stolen from their fans. I've made fun of Ava Chris Tyson and Dr. Disrespect because they are child groomers. I've made fun of Razor Fist and Razor Fist and Andrew Tate and Legal Mindset in that, and like there's another one, right? I kind of want someone on the left. This is kind of the hard part. I gotta find someone on the left who molested a kid. Yeah, yeah, that shit with Razor Fist was fucking. I'm gonna be honest, that hurt me to be honest, because Razor Fist is usually cool to watch. Like all his content, I found enjoyable. I disagree with a lot of it, but it's enjoyable. He has a good snark to him, right? Um, but once I was like, oh, that's kind of shitty. I don't really like that. Like I like the thing is, it's not that I don't watch his content anymore. It's that I can no longer like support watching it. As in, like I'll watch it, but I'm not gonna recommend anyone anymore because, like, yeah, that kind of hurts my ability to recommend you if you diddle kids, you know.
Sound quality. Plus, I'd have to get up and flip the freaking vinyl every 15 minutes, right? If I'm trying to play Donanpachi, I'm trying to play grind out runs and stuff. You think I have the time to get up and flip my vinyls over and over? Then, of course, there's like the self-flipping vinyl things, but those aren't like again. So
I mean, my thing is, I just like watch a lot of soundtracks on YouTube primarily. Like my music taste is mainly video game music at this point. Like I like normal music too, right? I can really rock down to some Queen or some Michael Jackson or some Prince, Potty Man and stuff, right? Kendrick Lamar is kind of a bop recently. Eminem used to be very, very good. It still has some good songs though. You know, but I'm not really like. I'd rather a lot of times I'd rather listen to like The Other Promise or Demise of the Ritual or Final Bowser or something. I don't know what it is. I just love video games a lot. I'm such a gamer. My music is like gamer songs, right? And even like my rap tends to be nerdcore. Like I'm like, would I rather listen to Without Me or by Eminem, or would I rather listen to Not a Furry by a ham sandwich? Right? or Shoulder to Stand On by JT Music and I forget the guy's channel it is. And that's another thing with digital, like because of the market, Shoulder to Stand On. Let's see, Rustage, right? Like I like them, right? Or To be fair, I would also rather not play the game that it's from, but like I love Machine Supremacy and Dan Bull's um, Wolfenstein, the new Colossus song, right? It's an amazing song. Machine Supremacy does pretty good vocals on it too. But yeah, to be fair, I would rather listen to that song than even play the fucking game because the game's kind of mid. It's not awful, but it's not good. That song fucking slaps, right? Like, yeah.
You can see there's a lot of headache when it comes to actually the performance
that
of.
was back when, like, to be fair, like that was back when like Wolfenstein was just like still had a lot of good games recently. He had technically had the new Colossus, but it also had the New Order, the Old Blood. What was another one? It also had the Return to Castle Wolfenstein and Wolfenstein 3D, which were pretty good as well, right? So we had a good time killing Nazis from the 90s to the early 2000s. It was starting in the 2010s when people stopped wanting to kill Nazis for some reason. In reality, it was just like the game just got kind of samey and didn't really have like the legendary return that Doom did.
Of vinyls, and that's something I had to accept.
Doom was Doom's return has been amazing.
These days, when I buy vinyls, I just keep them for aesthetics, right? I'll throw them on for like a novelty here and there, but I realize that buying the vinyl of the new Grimes album is an aesthetic purchase, not this larger sound quality purchase, right? If I want the sound quality, I actually get the CD, right? Because you can get the flax off the CD and stuff. So this is
Grimes was a musician. Man, I mainly know her as she left Elon Musk after he started getting like more transphobic for a trans woman that whistleblowed on a lot of the bullshit the CIA was doing. Which is kind of funny because Elon Musk is basically doing the same thing that Chelsea Manning did as well. Like, that's literally what Doge does, but now it's like, it's kind of funny. Like, they were already doing that, and they didn't even need authority.
Transferring over to how I feel about the video gaming situation here and how this pertains to video games, and I do have evidence of what I'm talking about. So again, let's go back to the Adam Koralik example where he talks about how let's not buy Sonic Mania on the PS4, or let's not buy this digital version of the game. Instead, we should all be buying physical versions of the games because the physical format, if everything else fails, is going to be the way to preserve these games, the way to move forward, right?
Piracy will still be superior to all of them. Yeah, it just ultimately will.
Actually, this is untrue in many, many, many occasions, and I have a number of examples to talk about. The first is we are not realizing that, especially with later consoles, I actually don't know with the PS4 because I haven't jailbroken my PS4 or anything like that, or messed too much with my PS4. But I do know with the Switch and with the PS3, both of these examples, I am sure the PS4 is like this as well, to be honest. I'm dead sure the PS4 is probably like this. If it's not, I'll be shocked. But let me talk about my example with the PS3. Yeah, so I have a nephew. This was years and years ago. Of course, it's PS3 era, so it was years and years ago, where his PS3 disk drive failed, and I actually had a spare PS3 that I modded and exploded because I had it downgraded, and the guy who downgraded it didn't put a thermal paste in it because he's an idiot. And so a month or two later, I didn't realize it at the time, but a month or two later, my CPU like burned out on it because the dude didn't put thermal paste when he downgraded.
Oh man, that's the dumbest thing ever too. Like, yeah.
But anyway, so I had this burned out PS3, but the disk drive was okay. So I was like, oh, okay. So what I'll do, and they were the same model. So I was like, okay, what I'll do is I'll just take the disk drive out of my PS3 and stick it in my nephew's PS3 as a gift. Be like, hey, I fixed your PS3. Well, turns out that Sony does not allow that to happen. You can't actually swap disk drives between PS3s, and I'm very certain this is true
Well,
with
you
PS4s
actually can with PS4s and PS5s. That is one thing you are actually allowed to do.
as well. I don't know why Sony would change their mind on this, but the motherboard and the disk drive have like some kind of like
Oh, wait, maybe like not the disc, the hard. You're talking about the disc drive. I'm thinking the hard drive disk. Yeah, that you can swap out, right? You can't swap out the disk drive. I don't think.
code connection to each other where you can't swap parts from each other. Why do they do this? Well, of course, it's like failed. It's designed failure, right? They design it to where you can't repair it yourself. There's not that freedom.
Yeah, right to repair. What's sad is that it passed, but it passed in such a milquetoast way that it doesn't even fucking matter.
And so moving
The
forward,
entire point, right? Like people were like, "Oh, I can't get arrested for repairing my tractor or my phone anymore," right? But what failed, right, was the important part, which was hardware standards, right? Which basically what that means is that the entire point of like that is all hardware would need to be modular with the parts that it had, so you can't lock a specific piece of hardware to that particular device. And that was not passed, right? The actual right to repair, the important part didn't pass. That part failed. All the other all the other parts passed, but they were they were but gumdrops and sprinkles compared to the steak dinner that was the fine steak dinner that was the actual meat and potato and the actual meat and potatoes of the right to repair, which was uh, modular hardware standards, where if you have a part um, of your hardware, you can use of an old like version of the hardware, you can use that to repair the device, right? And that's not a thing.
with like
So
PS4
the actual important part didn't pass.
and stuff like that. So let's say you've got all these physical PS4s and stuff like that, and you're saying, okay, well the discs are a fail-safe way to play the PS4s in the future, but actually that's not entirely true because down the line, so 20 years from now, maybe that's true. 30 years from now, 40 years from now, 50, those disk drives are gonna start failing. They are all gonna start failing. These are Blu-ray disk drives, and of course, they're not made for long-term usage, right? There's just like PS1 disk drives and stuff like that. They are all gonna start failing. The thing is that when this happens, people are gonna need to do hacking or modifications in order to allow the PS4 to accept a replacement disk drive, even if we even make replacement disk drives at the time, right? That's also something to think about, where the parts just might not exist. So banking on just the hardware surviving for the future, that's just not going to work out, because this hardware is not designed, especially PS4s. Those things burn. I can like heat my studio here with my PS4 because it burns so hot. So the hardware itself is not going to last forever, right? And so what are you going to do with those PS4 discs when the hardware shits out, right? When it craps out? Well,
this is why like preservation is piracy.
Of course, what you're going to do, you're going to emulate them, right? You're going to
I got a friend talking about some AI stuff that I got to check out. Let's see. All right, I'm gonna open that in a new browser. I gotta go to Civet. Check out this thing. Sorry. Okay.
play it on replacement hardware, whether it's either, I guess you could hope that the PS5 and future PS stuff will play that moving forward, but that you run into the same problem with PS5s, you know, when they start crapping out. And certain PS5s are not even going to have disk drives to begin with. So let's say the PS5 comes out, the disk drive model is kind of like popular among gamer people in the first release, but then they see the overwhelming majority of people are just buying the digital version. Let's say 80-70% of sales are digital. Sony's going to say, well, we made enough physical disk drive versions, let's just move to all digital versions moving forward. That's what's going to happen, I guarantee it. They're going to move, everything's going to start moving to diskless, because discs are a menace to what the industry wants, because it allows for used sales and stuff like that. And so everything's going to go diskless. So what are you going to do with your PS4 discs now? So the hardware in 20 years or so is going to fail. The disk drives in the PS5s might not even exist.
I mean, it's not down, but like they just got out maintenance, so it's like slow.
You're going to do, and I'm going to tell you what you're going to do, because this is played out with the current generations, is you are going to play those games on an emulator or on a PC release. You are not actually going to be playing those physical PS4 games in your physical PS4. That's not going to happen. Especially as we start moving forward with monitor technology and stuff like that. HDMI is going to become a thing of the past. Monitors won't have HDMI, so now you got to start doing stuff to get your HDMI out of your PS4 into your TV. Like, all of these are going to become barriers. And the funny thing is that this is happening right now with the SNES stuff, with Saturns, with PS1s, with all that stuff, N64s. All of this stuff, all these people, myself included, what we are doing is we are taking our physical games and we are storing them, and we are playing them either in emulators, on misters, which are basically like hardware-based emulation, but they're still emulators, or we are playing them on flashcards, right? Everyone is moving away from this model of playing on CRTs with your physical game and your physical cartridge. Now, some old school people are going to continue to do that, and there's nothing wrong with that, but this is not going to continue into the future. My children's generation are definitely not going to do that. The future generations are not going to do that. So when it comes to this idea of preserving stuff, when you think about preservation, digital is much, much stronger of a format for preservation than physical. It destroys it. There's no competition. Physical stuff, like your discs, all that sort of
stuff. I mean, ultimately, all is physical, right? Like, ultimately, really, the myth is that digital isn't physical as well, right? Like, ultimately, what digital preservation really amounts to is you're making copies of the physical thing you want to preserve for later, right? So you have multiple layers of guaranteeing protection of that physical medium rather than just one. Like, you're still doing it physically, right? Like, technically it's still all physical, but now the physical thing that you're preserving is just the data that you want preserved, because data is physical. Effectively, data has a physical manifestation. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to use physical objects, to read it, right? If it wasn't stored with like holes in certain disks beforehand, or fucking subatomic particles that are just there to hold electrons, for memory and shit, right?
Stuff decay, they degrade. They're also subject to events in the physical world, right? They're subject to fires. My brother, for instance, lost all of his PS3 games because his apartment caught fire and it burned them all away. So they're gone. Like, what do you do? They're gone. So if he had the digital versions, he could recover them. And so the next thing I want to talk about, which I know is going to be a big talking point for people, and this is where I think many people don't want to take that next step, which is, well, yes, but what about DRM? What about what's going to happen is that when we start moving to all digital, what's going to happen is these companies, like they've done in the past, They're going to release games, they're going to take them away. Oh, Marvel's pissed at us, so we have to take this off our services or whatever it is, licensing, all that stuff. All that is going to become subject to digital control. The thing is that as much as we talk about this being an issue, um, there is a very real world solution to it that happens all the time, which is jailbreaking shit. If you want to call it piracy, you can, but I honestly don't think necessarily a lot of this is piracy. But jailbreaking stuff, that is what is proven in all these console generations. That's how it works. The PS2s, your Saturns, your Dreamcasts. You don't even have to jailbreak Dreamcasts, but that's what's gonna happen. And then the older consoles, like SNES and N60 or Nintendo, you say, well, no one's jailbreaking those. Actually, they are. So when you put flash carts in there, there's like lockout security that these consoles have to try and prevent bootleg, licensed stuff from running on their consoles. But they have all been jailbroken in the past. So flash carts are a form of jailbreaking these older consoles because they're getting around their lockout chips and all that shit. So even older consoles like 16-bit consoles, 8-bit consoles, those are all jailbroken. And that is how it's going to work. That's how preservation is going to continue forward.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Where things, the physical items are nice as far as accessibility within your personal collection, but when it comes to preservation, they're not cutting it. It's always going to be the digital versions that are the preservation. And so, if you're really serious about game preservation, which I think is funny and ironic, the same people who are very, very invested in this, or say they are, and can get really fired up about emulation, get really fired up about jailbreaking stuff, fail to realize that down the line, if you want to play your PS4 game on a PS4, like I said, but your PS4 disk drive fails, or maybe it was a digital only game like PT, right? You want to play PT on a PS4 in 2020. How do you do that? You can do it. How do you do it? On a jailbroken console. And that is the actual moves forward with preservation is you don't need to worry too much about preservation as far as keeping your physical versions because that's all going to be released and jailbroken. So the PS4 is getting jailbroken. That's what hackers do, and so people always
Yeah.
like look on.
I'm gonna be honest. I like this is a great video. It seems like both me and him are kind of repeating the same things a lot. So yeah, definitely watch this video. If you don't already agree with it, I guess. I pretty much already agree with like everything he's saying. So all I'm doing is just kind of saying what he says a little earlier than he says it because we're basically on the same page on this topic verbatim. Um, which like it's different perspectives and all that, but I feel like we're just offering the same fucking like beliefs at the same time. Yeah, I'm just gonna be like, yeah, just go watch him. I'm a little retarded furry. Like I don't pretend my self worth is that high, right? I just say like, hey, look, I mean, like there videos I like, I will give a good review of, and videos I don't like, it doesn't matter who it is, right? I will give a negative review of, and sometimes I'll, agree or disagree more with it, Regardless, because I basically agree with everything he's saying to the point where I'm starting to predict things that he's saying because we're that much on the same page. I'm just gonna have people like view it from the smarter person. So yeah, here I'll have a link to it this time because it's like, hey, this guy's just saying the same thing, but smarter. So yeah.